So I was talking to this gentleman the other day who suggested that if I'm looking at military defence, the external defence of the nation on a macro scale, I should look at the internal home defence of the nation. Now, if we think about what the defence industry does, grouping both the police and the military and the firms that interact with them, it is generally grouped together, and that's for a reason, because it is defence of the nation. Either way, really, it's dichotomous. You see the military going after perhaps larger external threats to the nation, and the police going after smaller, generally internal threats to the nation. Now, this is important. I was talking to this gentleman, as I was saying, and he emphasised something that I have been considering for quite a while. But he really drove home the point, and I largely agree with him. He said that while spending is obviously going to be higher for the military, and that's not going to change because aircraft carriers cost rather a lot, the police play just as vital a role. And I think that's something really important to emphasise. A nation that has no means by which to maintain order crumbles. Plain and simple. And simply, if the military is to defend our great nation, and that is their job, to defend the nation, the police's role is to ensure that there is a nation to be defended at the end of the day. Their role is to keep the king's peace, and that role is huge. It comes with an assortment of responsibilities, yet people often ignore this absolute staple of national security. And this is, to an extent, partially an issue I see with military enthusiasts on YouTube. What they see potentially lacks consequence. Look at defence in any branch or role. It's the most consequential industry, in my view, whether police or military, and the firms that interact with them. The most consequential industry and, has the highest impact on national security than really anything other than perhaps politics, which, prevents any sort of macro changes. It's really the bedrock from which everything is built, security. And yet, people on YouTube, when they see a missile's impact, when they see a Harrier taking off vertically, a large ship firing its big naval cannon, and don't get me wrong, I love that sort of stuff, the consequence is often ignored. The importance is ignored, and it's viewed as nothing more than a spectacle. And I think this is largely where the dichotomy comes in. People like watching explosions, but people don't perhaps like watching so much police stuff. So I think I might cover it a little bit. Within the police force, there is huge value. And for those people who are interested in defence, the police force is actually something that is hugely important. And a symptom of this sort of, desire for dopamine in watching explosions rather than actually looking at the systems or looking at the security, the importance, the consequence behind these concepts, I think there's something being missed. The profundity that defence brings. The idea that the military can defend the nation, and that's a very positive thing to do, and the police ensure that there is something there to defend in the morning. So again, I'm going to be covering it sort of a little bit. In any case, hopefully we can talk to those people who like explosions a little bit today. When we think of the policeman, particularly in the UK, you think of a man in the classic uniform, a centurion helmet, a truncheon, and, well, sure, the police often do wear this sort of stuff, but they do far more than this. The police conduct extreme CQB, the guarding of nuclear missile silos, raids on the worst people that plague society. We love the classic Bobby, but policemen are so much more than that. So I think a good thing to address today is the idea that British officers do not carry any weapon systems and that they are entirely unarmed. They have certain tools at their disposal, but in regard to the police, not the sort of regular one you would see on the street, I think there's another side to look at. Again, people think of this ordinary policeman. They ignore counter-terror. They ignore police that guard very, very important strategic locations for the UK. So in guarding those strategic locations, in providing protection to society, I think let's go over the weapon systems that the police in the UK might employ. And many, again, might have this notion that the police don't necessarily carry anything but inflatable hammers. Well, that's not quite the case. The British police have a number of firearms at their disposal. Now, the UK has firearm capability for a certain constabulary determined by the force chief constable. And in regard to pistols, the police will either use a Glock 17 for Home Office police officers, the 17M for Metropolitan officers, the 19 for Metropolitan firearms officers, and the South Yorkshire Police, or potentially the Glock 26 for plainclothes officers. They might use the Sig Sauer P226, P229, P320, P250, or the Sig Pro, or even the Walther P99 for the Nottinghamshire Police. The British police submachine gun of choice is, of course, the Heckler & Koch MP5. One can't deny its potency after the Iranian embassy siege, but some officers actually do have access to the H&K MP7. In addition to this, British officers have access to a load of rifles, a plethora, for sharpshooting, for sniping, and for more forward-based strategies. Those more forward rifles are generally carbine to aid the transition to CQB environments, so they might choose to use the Heckler & Koch G36, or a variant of that, some sort of carbine variant, the LMT Defender, which I think is used by the Hampshire and Thames Valley Armed Response, the LMT LM7, used by the Northumbria Police, the Heckler & Koch G3, either SG1 or PSG1 variant, generally used for sniping roles, or the G3K variant used by the Metropolitan Police. There's also the HK53 used by the Cumbria Constabulary, the SIG SG 550, the 551 variant used by the West Mercia Police, the 552 variant used by the Derbyshire Police, and the 553 variant used by the West Yorkshire Police and the Staffordshire Police. There's also the Sig Sauer SIG 516, used by police around the UK, including the WMP, the Sig Sauer SIG 716, utilised by the Metropolitan Police generally with the 7.62 by 51mm version, which is it's a version of the SIG 516, basically the SIG 716. There's also the HK 416, which is used by the West Mercia Police and the Cumbria Constabulary. The Sig Sauer MCX, used by a load of forces, including the Counter-Terror Specialist Firearms Force, the officers of those, Specialist Firearms Officers, and Authorised Firearms Officers as well. There's also the SIG MCX Rattler, issued to firearms officers for the Metropolitan Police. For more sharpshooting and sniping roles, precision is of course needed. Sniper posts are key to the maintenance of full area security, and to provide pretty brilliant ISR to give police operators more options, knowing that they have a more final option available to them at all times. They might choose to utilise the HK 417 marksman rifle for the Surrey and Essex Police Force, the Ruger precision rifle used by the Northumbria Police, the Remington 700 variant, or one of the variants, used by the police snipers during the Raoul Murd manhunt. There's also the Accuracy International Arctic Warfare, which uses 7.62 caliber or 338.338, issued to firearms officers of the Metropolitan Police, as well as the Essex Police, Cheshire Police, North Wales Police, Alliance Armed Police Unit as well. And the Tikka T3 is used by the Essex Police. And in addition to the weapons above, AK-47 variants have been seen in use by Metropolitan Police officers role-playing as gunmen during basically counter-terror training exercises. Now, when there's less guaranteed certainty in an environment, when a single shot counts most, CQB included, then one needs a little more firepower in order to apprehend criminals and restore the King's peace. The police may need a shotgun. Now, their preference generally is either the Remington 870 used by the Greater Manchester Police generally, the Benelli M3 Super 90 used by the Metropolitan Police, generally firearms officers, the Benelli Nova and Supernova, which is utilised by the Essex Police. They might also have to utilise riot guns. So the West Midlands Police issue L104 truncheon guns with L18 sights, as well as the Heckler & Koch HK69A1, or L104A1 or A2, which is a 37mm riot gun which fires a truncheon round. They might also use stun grenades. Now, this is actually important because, again, these police officers are guarding really strategically important locations. You see certain officers operating for counter-terror units. You see certain officers, particularly for home office roles, guarding strategic locations. You see, nuclear assigned officers. So as I've said before, the policemen aren't just really ensuring everything is order in the neighborhood. That's important. They prevent riots. They protect transport systems from terror. They're defending ports of all kinds. They're guarding nuclear weapons. They're critical guardians of vital defense sites, national assets, and they have the firepower to do so. So I think the first step to dispelling the myth is to really lay out clearly what kind of firepower they have, which is rather a lot, and to assert initially in this short introduction that the police don't merely operate walking around the street, which is an important role, maintaining order. They guard some of the most important sites in the UK with some pretty serious firepower, and in addition to this, they, perform counter-terror operations and maintain order in that manner. And this isn't even to mention cybersecurity and all of the other really important stuff they do that's beyond the physical. So I think that's what we'll do today. Establish the dichotomy.